3 sinister true Thunderstorm horror tales. Terrifying secrets revealed in the dead of night. Samantha sat curled up on the couch, her son Ethan asleep in the next room, when the phone rang, a shriek slicing through the storm like a siren. By its tone, she could tell this call wouldn't be good news. Her father's shaky voice filled the air, a sound tinged with dread. "Sam, there's something. Someone is out there. Predator in Maplewood. You need to be careful." Panic gripped her heart. Maplewood, the town with charming streets and friendly faces, was it really harboring a monster? Outside, the wind screamed, shaking the trees as rain pelted the windows. Each drop felt like a warning. The glow of the streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Strange shapes flitted past her window, too quick to define. She rubbed her arms, chilled to the bone. A tightness settled deep in her chest, a whisper telling her all was not right. Was it paranoia? Or were the missing persons just the tip of an iceberg? She glanced outside again. The familiar neighborhood now morphed into a landscape of dread. The neighbors she had waved at daily suddenly felt like strangers, their faces drawn and haunted. Conversations she'd had about school lunches echoed like memories of a happier, safer time. But now, they were whispers of the lurking danger that lay just beyond her door. The storm matched her rising anxiety, thundering in violent bursts that made her jump. A flicker of movement caught her eye, and she leaned closer to the window, her breath caught in her throat. There it was, the figure she had feared, lurking an unsettling shadow skirting the edge of her yard. Was that Mr. Reynolds, her landlord? The silver-haired man with a grin that always felt too wide? He had swaggered into her life like he belonged, but the unease in his eyes nagged at her. She had trusted him to keep her safe, and yet he felt like an unwelcome specter now. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A growl of thunder roared through the night, shaking the ground. All at once, the shadows grew darker, pooling against the door like living ink. Samantha's heart raced, heavy in her chest. Sweat dripped down her back. They had all seemed so normal, but now every smile felt like a mask. Every kind word cloaked malice. The storm echoed her inner chaos, each thunderclap like a dark laugh from the monster within her community. Just as fear tightened its grip, the phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number flickered across the screen. A jolt of cold energy surged through her, making her hesitate. She felt watched. Were those eyes on her, the same ones that smiled and waved? Or had she truly lost her grip on reality? Gripping the phone tight, she stood, breath shallow, every instinct screaming for the truth, the kind of truth she was terrified to uncover. The storm howled, fierce and merciless, wrapping around her like a predator stalking its prey. In the shadows, she could almost see it, waiting. Just as she turned to face the unknown, something darted by her too fast, too terrifying to comprehend. The reality of what she faced sent shivers down her spine. As dawn approached, something unseen loomed ever closer. Would she uncover the secrets that lurked beneath Maplewood's facade? Or would she become just another whisper in the night? Ethan's soft breathing drifted from the other room, a stark contrast to the chaos gathering outside. Samantha's eyes darted nervously back to the window. The rain was relentless, each drop drumming on the glass. Yet, in that tumult, she felt a weight that gripped her heart tighter. The feeling of being watched was suffocating. Suddenly, the phone rang again, a cruel echo of her earlier dread. She hesitated, the screen illuminating her face with an eerie glow. "Don't answer," a voice in her head whispered, but she raised the phone to her ear, her throat tight. "Hello?" She managed. No response, just silence, heavy and foreboding. Her voice trembled. "Hello? Who is this?" Static crackled on the line, then a distorted voice broke through, whispering just above the thunder. Stay inside, the shadows are waiting. Then the line went dead. Her heart raced, pounding like a war drum. The realization crashed down on her. Whoever was watching didn't just know her. They knew she was alone. She bolted to the window, yanking back the curtain just as a flicker of lightning illuminated the figure outside. It was gone, disappeared into the night like a specter. Unable to shake the feeling of dread, she glanced down the street. Every house was dark, windows like empty eyes in the black storm. She swallowed hard. Thoughts of Mr. Reynolds slipped into her mind, twisting like a knife. Had he always been there, lurking in the shadows? Had he jeopardized her safety all along? A low growl of thunder shook the ground. She took a deep breath, steeling herself to check on Ethan. The quiet hum of the storm was unsettling. It felt too still, like the calm before a hurricane. As she walked toward her son's room, she noticed the dim light flickering at the end of the hallway. It wasn't coming from the living room. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her instincts screamed to turn back, but she pressed on. Ethan was safe, and there was no time for fear. When she reached his door, she pushed it open slowly. A wave of relief washed over her as she saw him, peacefully tucked under the covers, oblivious to the storm. As she leaned in to kiss his forehead, something shifted behind her. A cold draft grazed her neck, chilling her skin. In the fleeting moment of comfort, she turned to face the hallway, her heart falling as she saw another shape emerge from the shadows. It was right there, unmoving, yet suffused with an unsettling presence. "Ethan," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. The figure did not move. The air crackled with an unspoken threat that hung heavy in the gloom. "Run!" The whispery voice of the invisible caller echoed in her mind. Time suspended as Samantha locked eyes with the figure. It was a face she almost recognized, distorted by shadow and fear, a cruel mask that twisted her gut. Suddenly, the figure lunged, and instinct kicked in. She dashed towards Ethan, pulling him from his bed, cradling him tightly, fear flooding her veins. "We need to get out." But the house creaked and moaned, as if denying their escape. The storm raged worse, shaking the very foundation, merging its fury with the terror rising within her. As she fought to find a way out, she realized with dread that she had unknowingly entered a deadly game, and the storm was merely a backdrop to something evil lurking among the familiar faces she once knew. A flash of lightning illuminated the room, and just as quickly, the lights flickered and died. Darkness rushed in, and with it, the sound of footsteps echoed heavy, deliberate. She pressed Ethan to her, holding her breath, praying for the dawn. What lay ahead was unknown, but she could not stay paralyzed by fear. In that moment, she knew she had to confront whatever monster this was. Would facing the terror bring safety or doom? And more chilling still, had she unwittingly brought Ethan into danger? Heart pounding, she steeled herself for the unmistakable truth waiting in the shadows. Her heart raced in the suffocating darkness, urging her limbs to move. But where could they go? Every instinct screamed to escape, yet the oppressive weight of the night pressed down around them, thick and stifling. Samantha clutched Ethan tighter, his small form warm against her trembling body. The footsteps grew closer, dragging through the silence like a predator stalking its prey. She could almost feel the cold breath of an unseen foe against her skin. Gritting her teeth, she scanned the room for anything that could serve as a weapon. A lamp? No, that wouldn't do. A chair? Useless against whatever lurked here. "Ethan, stay quiet," she whispered, forcing the words out even as her throat felt tight. The shadow seemed to shift, elongating and retreating, only to break forth again with the sound of a breath slow and measured, chilling her bones. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from downstairs, shattering the dread-filled silence. It peeled away her courage like the skin of a rotten fruit, laying bare the raw terror she tried to suppress. "What was that?" Ethan murmured, his voice small and frightened. "Just stay close to me," she whispered, glancing around desperately. The dark was no longer just a backdrop. It seemed alive, pulsating around them. She had to make a choice. Would they take their chances downstairs, or stay trapped here, cornered by the house and its shadows. A question blurred through her mind. What had been hidden from her in the warmth of the day? What secrets rumbled beneath the floorboards and crept through the walls? Gathering her resolve, she pulled away from Ethan slightly, keeping him just behind her. The contours of the doorframe were faintly visible, mocking her desperate search for safety. "We have to go," she said, forcing herself to sound steady. With a nod, Ethan squeezed her hand, his fingers cold with fear. Together, they slipped from the room, stepping into the spiraling darkness of the hallway once more. Thunder roared above, drowning out the last echoes of their movement. She could almost feel the house bend under the weight of the storm. Each step was heavy, her heart thundering in tandem with the tempest outside. The urge to turn back clawed at her, but the need to protect her son overshadowed it. As they approached the staircase, she heard the unmistakable snap of a branch against the back window, a harrowing reminder that even nature could turn against them. Were they alone in this house, or was something else twisting the shadows around them? Just ahead, the staircase loomed, its steps dark and menacing. The air grew colder as they neared it, icy fingers gripping at their ankles. Taking a breath, she led Ethan forward. Each creak of the wood sounded like thunder in her ears, a countdown to whatever came next. Then, from beneath the stairs, she heard a low whisper, almost human, piercing through the storm. "Samantha, come find me," she froze, the voice echoing uncomfortably familiar. Gaze darting back to Ethan, she saw his small frame trembling, eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Who is that?" he whispered, his innocence cutting through her like a blade. The weight of what lay ahead crashed into her, but there was no time for hesitation. "Not now, Ethan." She hushed, pulling him closer, confronting the darkness ahead. But could the figure really be who she thought? The storm howled, drowning out the voice, yet the call persisted. Had she really been blind to the truth lurking all along? What lay waiting in the shadows? She was about to find out, but would it be the answers she craved or a greater horror than she imagined? Samantha steeled herself as she grasped Ethan's hand tighter. The whispers stirred within her like a forgotten memory, chilling her to the bone. "Who is calling me?" The question burned in her mind, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it now. They had to press on. Every step toward the staircase drew them deeper into the dark abyss, the walls seeming to close in like a tightening vice. With the storm raging outside, the only sound was the slow creep of uncertainty behind them. Her heart thudded furiously, echoing the terror fluttering in her chest. Suddenly, the whisper came again, slicing through the air. "Samantha," it felt closer, like a breath on the back of her neck, wrapping around her like a shroud. Panic surged within her. Who was that? The thought echoed ominously. "Mom!" Ethan screamed, his voice trembling, pulling her back to reality. She turned to him, his eyes wide, terror etched across his small face. "Get away from the stairs." She whipped around just in time to see a shadow dart back from the staircase. A chill cascaded down her spine. Something was down there, lurking, waiting for them to make the wrong move. "Stay behind me," she instructed, taking firm steps toward the stairs, every instinct screaming at her to run in the other direction. The air grew heavier, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Each step echoed through the hallway like a warning bell, marking their way to an unknown fate. As she neared the first stair, a low growl reverberated. It rippled through the air, slicing apart the storm's roar. Samantha's breath hitched. What was lurking in the shadows? Ethan clutched her leg, his small fingers digging into her thigh, grounding her with his fragile presence. "Mom, please don't go down there," he begged, his voice shaking. But she had no choice. "We need to know what's going on. I can't leave any stone unturned." With every ounce of her resolve, she placed one foot on the first step and froze. The whisper morphed into a wail, a sound soaked with anguish and desperation. "Help me finish what you started," it was pleading, dragging her toward it like a siren's call. Samantha's heart plunged into her stomach. Fear coiled tightly, constricting her breath. "Ethan, listen to me." she commanded abruptly, tearing her gaze from the void below. We can't give in to this. We have to. Before she could finish, the lights flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that danced and twisted across the walls. The power flickered, and the wailing pitch crescendoed, shaking the very foundation of the house. It was as if the house itself was alive, a gaping maw threatening to swallow them whole. Ethan whimpered, eyes darting wildly. "Mom, it's it." Samantha's pulse quickened. Had the blinding fear of the dark turned into something tangible? "We need to run," she gasped, her instincts kicking in as images of running through the front door flooded her mind. But another voice, an echo of her own, held her firmly in place. "Find me," the voice yowled again, more urgent this time, seeping into her thoughts like poison. "You brought me here." There was a tremor in the air and a sudden shift in the weight of shadows. The whisper seemed to swell, pulsing with a life of its own. Terror crashed over her like a rogue wave, dragging her deeper. "Ethan, now!" she shouted, yanking him back as she bolted into the hallway, retreating from the malevolent darkness. But as they turned, the coldness reached out, pulling at their heels, an icy grasp desperate to hold them back. "Where do we go?" Ethan's voice was pure fear, the shadows growing denser, as if each corner shifted, morphing into a threat. "Anywhere but here," Samantha yelled. They took off, their footsteps slapping against the wooden floor as the wails faded, becoming indistinct in the distance. But still, she felt the presence follow, lingering close in the darkness, watching them as they neared the door to the living room. The voice returned, now sounding almost playful, mocking their desperation. "Samantha, you can't escape." Samantha slammed her hand against the door's cold surface, her breath quickening. But there, just beyond the doorframe, something shifted, just out of sight, just beyond reach. And then silence. What awaited them in that suffocating stillness? Was it an escape or just a different kind of trap? The unsettling realization clawed at her instinct to run. She turned and faced the darkness once more, dread swirling in her gut. Were they really alone? Or was it simply a matter of time before whatever had been waiting revealed itself? In the eerie calm, one thought haunted her. Could the storm outside be merely a distraction from something much worse lurking just beyond their front door? The sudden silence pressed heavily against Samantha's eardrums, a deafening absence that made her feel vulnerable. The darkness hummed with 1,000 unseen eyes, and she had a sinking feeling that they were all watching. "Ethan, stay close," she whispered, forcing herself to sound calm despite her racing heart. But a creeping terror swallowed the words, knotted in her throat as she pushed against the door. Each heartbeat echoed in her ears, counting down to whatever lay on the other side. She hesitated, fingers trembling on the cold doorknob. Suddenly, a resounding crash from the back of the house jolted them both. It was a sound of upheaval. Something heavy had fallen. "Mom, we should go." Ethan's voice trembled, urgency rising in his throat. "I know, baby, just hold on a second." The urge to flee burned in her gut, but something kept her rooted at the door. Blast the storm, just blast it away. Somewhere in that chaos, the whispers grew louder, twisting her thoughts. "Open it," they beckoned in a sinister cadence. "You have to know what?" she hissed, unable to keep the building frustration from spilling over. "What do you want from me?" The shadows seemed to ripple in response, eager to draw her in. A soft snicker echoed through the hallway. Its pitch was wrong, almost glee-filled. Samantha turned on her heel, running her fingers through her hair, desperate for clarity. She felt the cold wood beneath her nails, grounding her in this hell. "Mom!" Ethan shrieked. She spun back just in time to see a dark mass begin to coalesce at the edge of the living room. It unfurled like smoke, taking form a grotesque silhouette that loomed larger than her fears had allowed. Terribly vibrant in the low light, it breathed as if alive. Instinct kicked in. "We have to go," she shouted, pulling Ethan close. Yet her body didn't want to move. It was as if the air had thickened, wrapping around her like vines. The apparition chuckled, a hollow sound that vibrated along the walls, shaking dust from the ceiling. "Why do you run?" Samantha crooned, its voice like gravel. "You brought me here, let us go. Please," she pleaded, heart pounding against her ribs as she pushed the door open with a fierce shove. A dim light flickered in the living room, enough to show her the cracked walls and peeling wallpaper, and yet it felt like a new world was waiting inside. She hoped only that it was safer than the dark. But just as she stepped inside, a series of snaps cracked through the air. Ethan screamed at her side, eyes wide with horror. The light fixed upon something moving, something behind them. "Mom, it's coming," he cried, pointing towards the staircase. Samantha barely had time to understand before the shadow surged forward, a flurry of darkness that raced across the ground. It skittered with unearthly speed, like a nightmarish creature escaping from the depths of the void. The growl escalated, a terrible sound vibrating both inside her skull and the wooden floor beneath, claiming all at once their breath and their hopes. "No, not again," she screamed, her panic propelling her forward. But Ethan was frozen, paralyzed by fear, leaving her no choice but to grab him and pull him along as they hurtled deeper into the living room. The slightest glimmer flickered in Samantha's mind, like repressed memories bubbling to the surface. "What did we do?" she gasped, a thought laced with fear. What had she awakened? The presence didn't relent, intensifying with each breath, each heartbeat. "You need to help me finish it," it lamented, a chorus of tortured voices joining the one, pleading with malevolence. "What? Finish what?" she yelled, desperation ravaging her. But the answer eluded her, buried somewhere in the recesses of her memory just as her sanity teetered on the brink. Then, in a fit of determination, they crashed into the living room. There, just across the fading boundaries of the house, lay an open window flung wide, a spot of sanctuary amidst the chaos. But was it freedom, or a facade of escape? As she turned to push Ethan toward it, the voices screamed in unison, a cacophony of fear and anger, hurling her instincts into turmoil. "Mom, hurry!" Ethan's voice broke through the noise, his eyes wide and pleading. Samantha pressed forward, heart in overdrive, but still felt the looming darkness creeping closer, a suffocating embrace that would swallow them whole. "Outside! We need to get outside!" she roared. Just as she reached the window, something lashed at her ankle, something cold and suffocating, dragging her back. The voices crescendoed. "You can't leave yet." What had they started? What awaited their departure? As the darkness closed in, she barely managed to grasp the window ledge. The horrible realization clawed at her as she understood. Sometimes, running away only led you further into the trap. The question burned in her mind, would escaping this time even be possible, or was it only a mirage? The grip around her ankle tightened, dragging Samantha backward with an unsettling force. Panic surged through her like a current, shocking her into action. She clawed at the window ledge, fighting against the suffocating darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. "Mom!" Ethan cried, his voice a desperate wail that pierced through the chaotic whispers, but the sound faded like a drowning echo. "Ethan!" she shouted, heart racing, her fingers slipping from the ledge as the cold tendrils yanked her deeper into the shadows. She could feel the crushing weight of an unseen presence dragging her down, into a nightmare. She twisted, searching for her son, but her vision faltered as the light flickered, each pulse weakening, allowing the darkness to creep closer. The chilling laughter crescendoed, reverberating like thunder rolling through the valley, suffocating her hope. "Help me." The echoing voice whispered closer now, like an intimate confession meant only for her. "You must help me finish." "Finish what?" she shrieked, fear twisting tight in her gut, her bravery battling against the seed of despair trying to take root. Just as the shadows threatened to engulf her entirely, suddenly, a bright flash of light illuminated the room. The thunder outside grew louder, yet this flash didn't come from the storm. The room flickered to life, cracking the darkness for a heartbeat. In that split second, she saw Ethan holding a small, silver trinket in his trembling hands. "Mom, I found this," he shouted as if time stood still. Relief washed over her, but it was quickly dashed away, for the shadows writhed and shrieked in anger at the light. What is it? She cried back, her voice mingling with the sounds of rage from the dark corners of the room. I don't know. I just felt it. Ethan's small voice cracked, and he stared into the lurking shadows with wide eyes. The trinket pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, pushing back against the dark mass that threatened to consume them. Throw it, Samantha urged, scrambling toward him. We need to get rid of it. As if in response, the shadows roared, a cacophony of pain and fury crashing like waves against the walls. The floor jittered beneath them as the house shivered with the fury of whatever haunted it. No, it belongs to me, the shadows screamed, their voices turning frenzied, drowning everything in a storm of sound. Items began to rattle, unsettled by the fury of the presence surrounding them. Ethan clutched the trinket tighter, face pale with indecision. I can't. I don't want to lose it. What do you mean, lose it? She shouted, panic bubbling over. You don't understand. It's the key to all this. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, Samantha understood that her son felt some connection to this thing, something pulling at the edge of his mind, whispering promises. Listen to me, she said, urgency in her words. It's either you or it. We have to. Before she finished, the trinket surged with light, brighter than anything she had ever seen. The shadows recoiled, screeching as though burned by the illumination. Throw it, Ethan. But instead of tossing it away, he stepped closer to the darkness, a startling confidence washing over him. No, maybe it can help. Ethan, don't. But it was too late. The instant the trinket approached the shadows, they paused, silence washing over the room like a stillness before an impending storm. The growling muted, replaced by an eerie calm. Welcome home. The voice reverberated, but this time, it was laced with something new, hope, or simply another layer of deceit. Mom, I can feel it. It wants something. Ethan's voice wavered, caught between his fear and newfound allure. Samantha's heart sank as she realized her son might be caught in a trap of his own. Ethan, run. But he hesitated, entranced by the swirling darkness now coiling around him like a serpent. Stay back, she cried, darting forward, every instinct screaming for her to protect him. As she reached for him, she could feel the air change. The darkness itself seemed to breathe, and with that breath came a deep chilling. A violent wind whipped through the room, slamming doors shut and rattling windows. Samantha lurched, almost losing her footing. The warmth of Ethan's small hand slipped from hers, drawn closer to the heart of the shadow. Mom, it's calling me. That was the last thing she heard before the shadows enveloped him, pulling him into its depths, leaving Samantha to grapple with the rising tide of darkness alone. Ethan, she screamed, as the energies pulled tighter around them. The realization hit her hard. Could it take her as well? Anger ignited in her chest. I want to lose you. With desperation coursing through her, she lunged for the trinket, intent on breaking the bond. But as she reached for it, the voices spoke again, low and threatening. You don't know what you're doing. But it was too late. The answer was clear. What they had awakened was now demanding what was owed. What if it was too much for her to handle? As the shadows tightened around her, all she could think was the crushing question. What would the price be for Sam to reclaim her son? Samantha felt the shadows grip her like a vice, a cold terror wrapping around her body. The room throbbed with an energy she couldn't comprehend, an atmosphere thick with desperation and fear. The flicker of the trinket sent waves of hope and dread crashing against her heart. Ethan, she cried again, her voice fractured by anguish. The silence that replied felt almost mocking. The only sound the relentless whispering of the darkness promising her everything if she surrendered. She felt the heat of fury rise within her. Get away from him, she screamed, taking a step toward the swirling mass, her hand stretching out toward the silver object. It had to be the answer, the key to both Ethan's safety and her own. A flicker of dreadful clarity crossed her mind. If she took it, was there a chance to pull him back? The shadows hissed, their collective breath like cold wind brushing over her skin, curling and coiling around her, suffocating. You would betray him? Join us, the voice of the darkness crooned, a sickly sweet caress that slithered into her ears. You could become like him, like us. No, she roared defiantly, shaking her head. This wasn't Ethan. The real him was still struggling to break free from under its weight. I won't let you take him. The room shifted, and with every heartbeat, the shadows evolved, dancing like sinister figures in the dark. Ethan's faint silhouette was still visible, struggling against the oppression of the night. Samantha felt the familiar pulse of maternal instinct kick in, and with it, desperation clawed at her throat. Ethan, she screamed, forcing her eyes to remain locked on him, fighting to maintain the connection. You need to let it go. It's lying to you. But how could her son resist something that felt so saturated with power? The light from the trinket flickered, an unstable pulse struggling to hold back the tides of night. The shadows recoiled with malevolence each time the light surged, but absorbed the gaps when it dimmed. It was a battle of wills, and it was clear whose was stronger. Mom, I can't. His voice trembled through the air, wavering between reality and illusion. It's pulling me in. It wants to help me help us. A wave of despair crashed over her like an icy tide. No, it wants to trap you. Please, Ethan. Fight it. Suddenly, the darkness roared. A sound so primal and terrifying crashed over her, shaking the very foundations of the house. The shadows tightened their grip, squeezing the air from her lungs until she could hardly breathe. She could feel their claws scratching against her mind, digging for whatever spark of dread might drive her down to join her son willingly. Combating the darkness felt like battling a storm. Each thought was met with blinding winds, pulling her in different directions. The air vibrated, and she felt that energy shift again. As she fought to hold herself steady, an idea sparked within her, a frantic, desperate notion. Ethan, what if it's not just you? What if we can use the trinket as a weapon against the shadows? She prayed he would hear her. We can do this together. In that moment, there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, the hint of a spark awakening from the depths of his being. Together, he echoed, a thread of hope weaving through his fear. Yes, just like always. Take my hand. Samantha lunged forward, stretching out her arm, channeling every ounce of will into that single moment of contact. The warmth of their connection flared, and the shadows hissed, thrashing as if they felt threatened by their bond. And then, in that heartbeat suspended in time, the trinket pulsed violently, its light erupting in a brilliant flare that shook the very walls of their prison. The shadows shrieked in agony, retreating for the first time, but the anger in their voices swirled louder, drowning Samantha in a cacophony of demands. Foolish mortals, you cannot fight what you cannot understand. The words echoed through her skull like an ominous drum, but she tightened her grip on Ethan. We can fight. Together. As the shadows recoiled, she sensed something shift deep within them, like a guardian growing more furious at their defiance. Despair began to claw back at her resolve, desperate to bind her will. Hold on, Ethan, she shouted, her voice now a raspy whisper. She felt the exhalation of the house around them, a chilling breath that teased at her sanity. What if they weren't strong enough? What if the shadows demanded something more? And just before darkness could envelop them both entirely, the reluctant fingers of hope reached out for her, closing the distance and intertwining their hearts against the shadow's grasp. Would it be enough? Mom, I can't, Ethan murmured, uncertainty creeping back into his voice as the light flickered one more time. A sudden realization struck deep within Samantha. If they couldn't finish this fight, would they risk losing everything or each other forever? What price would they have to pay to break free? Would the shadows demand more than they were willing to sacrifice? The darkness stirred, hungry for its due, its grip ever firmer. The final moment of truth drew near, and with it came a chilling question that froze her blood. Are you willing to lose yourself to save him? Samantha's heart raced as the shadows writhed around them, pulsating with a frantic energy, like a living thing intent on suffocation. She could hear Ethan's breath falter, caught somewhere between dread and the shifting call of the darkness. The air crackled with unspoken threats, each whisper drawing closer, promising power, freedom and a bond that would trap him forever. Mom, I feel it pulling. He struggled with the words, like trying to swim against a tide determined to drag him down. She tightened her grip on his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against the icy tendrils that lashed out from the weight of the darkness. Don't give in. Remember who you are. Remember us. But the shadows didn't heed her plea. They twisted and morphed into phantoms, distorted faces emerging from the depths, their mouths opening in silent screams and laughter. Fingers of inky blackness clawed at the room, stretching toward her and Ethan like hungry mouths. In the pit of her stomach, a gnawing fear settled. What if Ethan was right? What if this dark power truly could help them? But that thought ignited a different kind of panic. What would they have to sacrifice to accept such help? Would it be worth the price? The shadows hissed louder, a deafening symphony of malice. Join us, little boy. You could be powerful, you could rule. Power awaits. No, Samantha shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. You don't need them, she cried desperately. You need me. But as she spoke, the flickering light of the trinket began to dim, its pulse threatening to drown in the sea of black creeping closer. She could feel the shadows coiling tighter, planting despair within her heart. Doubts began to cast their shadows upon her thoughts. What if hope was just another trap? Suddenly, a jolt of energy erupted from within the trinket, its brilliance tearing through the encroaching darkness. Ethan's eyes widened, reflecting the furious light, and in that moment, she saw clarity, a brief glimpse of her son breaking through the waves of shadow. Mom! His voice steeled with newfound strength, like a warrior rising from the ashes. If I let go, what will happen to us? Samantha felt the walls of her resolve shift. We will fight. Together. It's our only chance. She pressed against the choking veil of darkness, determination swelling within her, vibrant and furious. Trust me, she implored, feeling her heart synchronize with the pulse of the trinket. The light brightened slightly, steadying against the onslaught of shadows, illuminating the corners of the room that had long been lost to despair. But the shadows writhed in retaliation, their forms twisting into grotesque mockeries. You are fools. You think you understand power? You know nothing of the cost. The voice echoed ominously, weaving in and out of reality, taunting with every claim the shadows made. Samantha felt doubt worm into her heart, relaying traitorous words. What if resisting this darkness meant losing Ethan forever? The light from the trinket began to flutter, struggling under the weight of uncertainty. They were locked in an agonizing stalemate, caught between the radiant strength of their spirits and the insidious whispers of a dark legacy. Mom, I'm scared, Ethan breathed, his eyes darting between the flickering light and the yawning darkness. I'm scared too, Ethan, she admitted, her voice trembling but resolute. But I won't let you go. In that single moment of defiance, the shadows recoiled. For an instant, the air cleared, revealing glimpses of the room's familiar layout, the worn couch, the paintings that adorned the walls. A fleeting vision of safety blossomed in Samantha's mind. It was as if the darkness momentarily retreated, sensing the true power of their connection. The darkness screamed in anger, swirling back with increased ferocity, clawing at her mind and body in a desperate attempt to reclaim what it had almost lost. You think you can fight us? You cannot resist forever. Then let us see how long we can go. She snapped back, pushing forward with every ounce of strength. But as the shadows surged once more, Samantha felt a chill curling at the edges of her mind. Could she truly maintain her grip? Would the darkness swallow them whole if she faltered? Looking into Ethan's terrified eyes, she steeled herself and whispered, "We can break this. We must." And as the shadows swelled, darker and hungrier, the room began to tremble beneath their convergence, a warning of the chaos threatening to erupt. She could no longer tell if the battle was outside of her or right inside her very soul. Their connection held, but for how long? She felt a sudden stirring deep within the depths of the shadows, a new, darker force emerging, one that threatened to break them completely. Are you ready to face the price of your defiance? The shadows taunted, voices melding into one. The question echoed, hanging thick in the air. What would they have to sacrifice to defeat the darkness? Would they leave behind their very essence in the battle? Samantha took a shaky breath as the ground beneath them shuddered with an impending dread. In that moment, she realized the terrifying truth. This was only the beginning of their fight, and the fiercest storm was still to come. Samantha's fingers tingled from the icy grip of the shadows, the oppressive darkness pressing closer, forcing her heart into a rapid rhythm against her chest. She could almost taste the dread, a metallic tang crawling at the back of her throat. Ethereal whispers clawed at her mind, each word wrapping around her sanity like a tightening noose. "Mom, it's so dark," Ethan whimpered, a tremor of fear shattering his brave facade. "Stay with me, Ethan," Samantha yelled, the urgency in her voice drowning in the chaotic swirl of shadows. The warmth of their connection flickered like a candle in a storm, fighting against the tempest of despair. She could feel the spectral fingers reaching out not just for him, but for her as well. It was as if the darkness sought to possess them entirely. A series of flashes illuminated the room. At first, it was the pale, frantic light of the trinket, but then a darker, more sinister glow seeped through, an eerie luminescence that painted the walls with indistinguishable shapes, crawling upwards like the shadows themselves. Faces emerged from that sickly light, nightmarish visages half-formed, their eyes hollow, voices echoing the desperation of forgotten souls. Each face seemed to beckon, to promise solace in exchange for surrender, their mouths moving in a silent chant that resonated deep within her. "No," she gasped, the strain of her resolve slipping as chills crept across her skin. "You won't take us." Yet the darkness writhed fiercely in response, chuckling mockingly. "You think you can hold on, little girl? You think love can shield you? Shut up," Ethan cried, drawing strength from his mother's desperation. He squeezed her hand, unyielding. "We can do this." In that moment of defiance, the trinket burst brightly, filling the room with an unbearable brilliance that made the shadows recoil. But even as the light blazed, Samantha felt the flicker of hope being snuffed out. The shadows seemed to breathe, thickening into a suffocating fog. The air grew heavy, a palpable weight pressing down on them as if the very atmosphere was conspiring against their survival. "Fight it," she urged, her voice cracking under the pressure. The floor beneath them shifted violently, splintering under the strain. Ethan stumbled, and Samantha lunged forward, gripping his arm tightly. "Hold on to me. Don't let go." But doubt wormed its way back in, a sensation as potent as the choking shadows. Would their unity truly be enough against this gathering storm? Was loving each other a weapon or a vulnerability? Just then, a terrible wail echoed through the room. The shadows recoiled as if struck, and in that frozen heartbeat, Samantha saw a figure emerging from within the darkness, grotesque and towering, an abomination of shifting shadows and half-formed limbs. It approached slowly, deliberately, a promise of chaos etched into its features. "Welcome to the cost of your defiance," it thundered, voice like gravel grinding against stone. "You will see what real power demands." Samantha's heart plummeted. The shadows swirled around the figure like a cloak, caressing the edges of its form. Was this the entity behind the darkness? The puppeteer controlling their fate? "Run!" she screamed, feeling her instincts howl in panic. But where could they possibly escape when the darkness surrounded them, indomitable and cruel? As they turned to flee, the floor cracked open, forming dark fissures that swallowed the light. Samantha felt Ethan's hand slip free for just a second, lost in the chaos. "No!" she shouted, turning back just in time to see her son's terrified expression swallowed by the darkness as the figure loomed large behind him. Time froze. It was as if the shadows halted in anticipation, waiting, watching, hungry for her response. With a sudden surge of fury and resolve, she lunged toward Ethan. "Come to me." But before she could reach him, the darkness erupted, pulling him into its depths, leaving Samantha standing alone in the chaotic tempest, heart racing, breaths lost in a cacophony of despair. "Mom!" Ethan's voice echoed through the shadows, distant and desperate. "No, I want to let go," Samantha screamed, furious tears stinging her eyes. Gripping the trinket tightly, she prepared for one final stand against the encroaching shadows, heart pounding with the weight of fear. The question crept back, lurking in the shadows of her mind. What was she willing to sacrifice to save her son? How deep was the darkness willing to reach? As the grotesque figure hailed its victory, Samantha felt a jolt within her, a flicker of courage igniting against the endless night. But could she summon enough light to battle this horror? In the pitch of despair, the grave answer awaited. Samantha's heart raced in the darkness, pounding against her chest like a war drum. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but she couldn't leave Ethan behind. Deep within the shadows, his cries echoed, tainted with fear. "Mom!" they pleaded, and she could almost feel the weight of his terror wrapping around her like chains. "No," she whispered, the word a promise, a vow to protect him no matter the cost. She could feel the oppressive presence tightening around her, feeding off her fear. "You will not take him." With a fierce surge of determination, she lunged into the void, chasing those echoes of desperation. The swirling shadows rushed at her, alive with their insidious whispers, taunting her resolve, each syllable coated in malice. "Come to us, Samantha, let us show you how easy it is." "No," she yelled, her voice breaking through the insidious call of darkness, defiance igniting within. "I will not fall for your lies." But as the eerie glow of the trinket pulsed in her hand, the darkness recoiled momentarily, and a figure surged forth from the depths. It was the grotesque creature, towering and twisted, a monstrous amalgamation of nightmares, eyes glittering with malice. "Welcome, little mother," it boomed, mocking her with its sinister smile. "You've come to reclaim what is yours." Heart racing, she held the trinket before her. The glow intensified, a beacon of hope amidst the encroaching shadows. "Ethan!" she screamed again, searching through the darkness for any sign of her son. She could feel the darkness shift, as if it were pulling him deeper into its embrace. The thought of losing Ethan shattered her heart. "Fight it, baby. Use the light." The thought of Ethan alone, frightened, and lost cut deeper than any wound. The shadows hissed in response, and the creature loomed closer, bringing with it a wave of despair. "You cannot save him. He is lost to us." "No," she cried, digging her nails into the warmth of the trinket. It wasn't just a lifeline, it was her strength, their connection. "We will fight together." And with that, she thrust the trinket forward, its light bursting forth, illuminating the abyss with a brilliant glow that sent the shadows skittering back. "You cannot have him." The air crackled with energy, pulsating as she felt the ancient might within the trinket respond to her resolve. The dark being shrieked, its form wavering as if flickering between existence and oblivion. "No, your love cannot save him." The shadows whirled angrily around its body, seeking to crush her light. "Maybe not, but it will fight," she roared, desperation channeling into fierce loyalty as she pressed on. "Ethan, I'm here. I won't leave you." In that moment, a flicker of light sparked within the shadows, a glimmer of hope as she fought back against the dark pull. "We are stronger together," she meeting the creature's growl with her fierce declaration. "Join me." It hissed lowly, seductive and tantalizing like the promise of temptation. "Together you could wield power like no other, rule this realm of shadows." Memories flashed through her mind every moment with Ethan, laughter, warmth, love. "I already hold the greatest power," she shot back. "It's my son." As her words echoed through the tempest, a light flickered in the haze of darkness, pooling until it burst forth in a flood of brilliance. The dark figure screamed, a guttural wail that shook the very foundation of the house. "No, you cannot defy. I will have what is owed." "No," she yelled defiantly, gathering the strength of every mother's love, channeling it into the trinket. "I will not be your pawn." Drawing on the essence of hope, she hurled the trinket into the center of the shadows. The explosion of light was blinding. Ethan's cries grew louder, pleading, full of life. "Mom!" The shadows recoiled, shrieking with agony. They twisted, thrashing, losing their grip on reality. The insatiable hunger unraveling as light consumed them. Finish it, the creature howled, desperation lining its voice, as it faced obliteration. I will. For my son. With one last push, the light engulfed the monster, illuminating the room. Brighter than 1,000 suns. The boundaries of shadow shattered, flickering as the dark masses dissipated into nothingness, screaming their last protests as silence fell. The light faded, lingering like a warm embrace against the chill. The room grew still, the unsettling presence evaporating into thin air. Samantha felt relieved, exhausted, as she collapsed onto her knees. Mom? Ethan's voice was small, timid, breaking through the silence like a ray of sunlight. I'm here, she gasped, her voice raw as she turned to find him standing just a few steps away, eyes wide, color rushing back into his face. Running to him, she wrapped him in a tight embrace, overwhelmed with the weight of relief. He was safe. They stayed locked together in the aftermath of their battle, hearts steadying, breaths calming. The storm outside had quieted, as if the world had chosen to let them heal. The sun would rise soon, washing away the night. Are we safe now? Ethan murmured against her shoulder. Yeah, buddy, she whispered, brushing a tear from her eye. For now we're safe. As dawn broke gently through the window, Samantha felt a sense of resolve settle within her. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. And in that victory, she found a promise she would forever protect her son, no matter what shadows lay ahead. They both knew Maplewood held many secrets, but together, they could face anything. And as they walked out into the warm morning light, they took their first steps toward a new beginning. Don't forget, this is the moment you need to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It really makes a difference. I want to see you flood that comment section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support what you love.